Minister of Police Senzo Mchunu yesterday released the second quarter crime statistics, emphasizing the urgent need for a whole of society approach to tackle crime. South Africa's murder rate has dropped by 5.8% in the second quarter, sexual offences by 2.5%, robbery with aggravating circumstances by 8.8%, and rape by 3.1%. Robbery at residential premises and non-residential premises decreased by 1.3% and 21.1% respectively. To unpack the second quarter crime statistics, we've got crime analyst Dr. Kock. He's joining us virtually. It's good to have you, Doctor. Thank you very, very much for your time.
Good morning, and good morning to the listeners.
So we start on an optimistic note that we're seeing a slight decrease in the murder rate. But 70 people being killed in South Africa daily, I'm not sure we should be celebrating.
No, I don't think we should celebrate at this stage because, this is only one quarter. I must say, even the previous quarter, the first quarter of this financial year, looked better than what we saw for the last 3-4 years. So I am a little bit optimistic that if we can do the same thing over and over again over the next 6 years, we can take the crime levels back where it was in 2010. Then we had a very low murder figure and much more realistic murder figure of just above the 15,000. So if we can take it back there at the tempo of 6 to 7% annually. But I agree, we can't celebrate after one quarter. There can be many explanations why it was a bit lower in this quarter. But I'm optimistic. Optimistic. But actually, the only real thing which is negative in these crime statistics, it's a lot of greens and very few reds. But then hidden somewhere in the briefing document, we come to kidnapping. And kidnapping is the one crime which is still going up, very much up. It's increasing at a very high rate. For the last 3 years, kidnapping actually tripled. And there must be an explanation for this.
This is a very worrying. That's a very worrying trend. If you don't mind, sorry, I'd like to just focus on this issue of kidnapping as well, because we've touched on murder. We've seen a slight decrease, but it's still nowhere near good enough. But this rise in kidnapping, and it's something that we've been seeing, obviously kidnapping is not very much so reported on because it's something that I know, police don't like to put out there, families like to hide it because we don't want this to spiral out of control and become a way of making money. But having said that, it still is, and excessive ransoms are being asked for. People are being kidnapped in all scenarios and in all places of society. This is something that we've always noticed in countries afar, but this seems to be a massive trend in South Africa. Perhaps you want to go into a bit more depth on the kidnapping stats.
Okay, on the kidnapping, I looked at it yesterday, and I've done some work in the past months. It seems there's a new trend. You see, many kidnapping in South Africa, the definition of kidnapping is not that there's always a ransom. About 2 years ago, the police released figures under what circumstances a kidnapping was registered. And most of our kidnappings at that stage, before the big rise, the massive rise in kidnappings, was actually during carjacking and during house robbery. People are kept against their will, even if it's a few minutes, they are kept against their will, and then a case of kidnapping is also, or a charge of kidnapping is also registered. But now, in the last 3 years, something else happened. And what happened in the last 3 years is that we find a little bit more, it's actually very small figures still, where a ransom is asked. Somebody rich, a businessman, is being kidnapped, or his children is kidnapped, and then they ask for a large sum of money for the release of these people. But this is very small figures. It is still only about 3% of the massive number of kidnappings that we have in South Africa.
Okay.
But there's a new trend,
Yeah.
and this happened during the past 3 years.
And we need to
They're just
keep a watch on that
just,
one.
And just ordinary people. Ordinary people are, when they get their salary, their small salary at the end of the month. These are restaurant workers, hospital personnel. They get their small amount. Then they are kidnapped. They are taken against their will to a place, and they are then forced to using their bank apps to transfer money to these criminals' pockets, to their accounts.
Well,
and this is actually giving us the big numbers.
Yeah, and it's a big worry. Sorry for me rushing you along. I'm looking at the time, and we don't have too much time left. We've probably got 4 minutes to get through what is a massive conversation here. So from kidnapping, I want to move into the increase of murders of women and children, because this is exceptionally worrying, especially as we sit here in the 16 days of activism of no violence against women and children. If my reading is right into this, the stats are showing that the number of women murdered are sitting at about 1,000 over the time, 600 children between July and September. This is an increase. The murder of women and children. This is a national emergency.
That is clearly an increase. We can see the reds there. It is quite a increase. And the problem there, this is mostly, when it comes to women, many of these cases are domestic. Many of these cases are women killed during domestic violence. When it comes to children, some of that is also domestic, but most of the children are killed in where there is a crossfire against between gangs in the Cape area or in other areas of the country. Most of the children are killed in that circumstances. When it comes to children, we must also remember that we take a child up to the age of below 18. So many children are killed at a higher age. It's not babies or small toddlers that are killed. It is children which fight amongst themselves. Children of 16, 17, we find it in schools, that there's some fighting, and in that process, children are killed. But I agree with you. It seems we are losing the battle against women being killed during domestic violence or during violence where a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship in that situation.
Huge concern. In fact, that was a question we asked yesterday, and I think you've just answered it for us. We were asking, are we winning the battle? Are we getting better? And you answered it, and the answer is really no. Organised crime. This is also a massive problem. It really is. And I mean, these economic crimes are literally threatening the foundation of the economy here in South Africa. Talk to us about this one. I mean, this is an uptick of 18.5%. I mean, this is the livelihoods of South Africans at stake here. It almost feels like that the police service should be reconfigured to deal more realistically with its policing strategies and plans around this.
When it comes to commercial crime or white collar crime, as it is also sometimes called, unfortunately we find more and more fraud. It seems, even in my personal life, when I start my computer in the morning, my PC, when I look on my cell phone, you get all kinds of tricks. It's just click on this, click on that, and it is just, and especially older people who lose their money. It is really rife. But that's not the end. I mean, that's not where organized crime stops. Organized crime now occupy all sectors of South African, of our economy, of our society. I mean, if we look at the Zamazamas, and we now see what is happening at Stilfontein, and that's only one shaft, one mine, one shaft. And people say there are hundreds of them underground there. I mean, that is costing the country a lot of money.
Yeah.
And then also when we look at the building mafia, I mean, that is stopping development, and especially development, public development, like schools, like roads, those kind of things. And we can go to any area of our economy and we will find organized crime there.
Yeah, indeed.
It's not now only, on drugs. It is all, I mean, you get the extortion gangs.
It's on everything at the moment. I want to, as we come to an end, talk about the provinces that are looking the worst at the moment. And the Eastern Cape, unfortunately, is the one that just jumps out. It has a rate of 19.8% per 100,000 people. This is the murder capital of South Africa at the moment, and that's the Eastern Cape, followed by the Western Cape, and then KZN, all above the national average.
Yeah, it seems the seaboard provinces, but especially the Eastern Cape is the worst in all regards. And that is strange because when I was still in the police, the problems were actually the Western Cape and not the Eastern Cape. But over the years, I've seen this trend developing that the Eastern Cape really, when it comes to murder, attempted murder, even kidnappings, these kind of things, it is really bad.
Yeah, and just as I let you go, in a minute, my biggest problem here is we talk about the numbers, we talk about the problems, we talk about the issues. Do we see where police and the courts have actually, firstly, found the perpetrators, and whether these perpetrators are sitting behind bars? Because, I mean, I know of myself probably 3 different cases, 3 murders, that nobody knows what's going on, and police outwardly say, please hire private investigators, we will never get to this case.
I think when we look at the police, I still think there's some pockets of excellence at some stations in this country where visible policing is done correctly, where there is still some capacity and they try their level best. And this is then giving us figures which is on the decrease if you have good visible policing. Unfortunately, many crimes are not prevented by visible policing, and especially murders, and they must be investigated. Those crimes must be investigated by detectives. And my view is that we don't have a detective capacity anymore. We have a total lack of detective capacity, and then I don't even want to talk about intelligence.
We leave it there. Thank you for talking to us. Dr. Kock is a crime analyst talking to us about these crime statistics that have come out. We may see a drop in the reporting, but the reality is 70 people are murdered every single day here in South Africa.